When I was 16, my family rented a strange house in a small town in Pennsylvania. It was an old place, 2 stories tall, faded gray siding, an overgrown yard, and a sagging front porch that creaked when you stepped on it. From the outside, it looked like the kind of house you'd expect to see in a horror movie. But we were on a tight budget, and my dad needed to relocate quickly for his new job. The inside wasn't much better. The walls were thin. The pipes clanged every time you turned on a faucet. The floorboards whined like they were in pain. But what stood out the most were the vents. These weren't normal vents. They were large, old-fashioned metal grates, big enough to shove your whole arm through. They connected nearly every room. You could hear everything: conversations, footsteps, even quiet humming if someone was in the next room. It was like the whole house had ears. My bedroom was upstairs, and it had one of those vents directly across from my bed. It was positioned low on the wall, maybe 6 inches off the floor, and for some reason, it always gave me a weird feeling. I kept imagining eyes staring back through it. At first, it was just unease, but then things started happening. About a week after we moved in, I woke up suddenly in the middle of the night. It was dead silent. I didn't hear any noise. No traffic, no creaks, just a heavy, still silence. And then I heard breathing. It was faint but unmistakable, ragged, shallow breaths, not coming from inside my room, from a vent. I sat up in bed and stared at it. My heart started racing. I thought maybe I was imagining it. I held my own breath, just to be sure, and then I heard it. Eli. A whisper. My name. I jumped out of bed and ran to my parents' room. My dad rolled his eyes and said I was dreaming. My mom told me maybe I just heard a neighbor through the vents, but we didn't have any neighbors that close. The next night, I left the lights on and stayed up late, pretending to do homework. I kept glancing at the vent. Nothing happened until just after 2 a.m. The lights flickered for a moment, and then I heard it again. A whisper. The same voice, closer this time. I see you. I slammed my book shut, turned on music, and stayed up the rest of the night. A few days later, I downloaded a sound recorder app on my phone. I left the phone on the floor right next to the vent and let it record overnight. The next morning, I listened. Most of it was static, the occasional creak. But then at exactly 2:41 a.m., I heard breathing. Slow, measured, unnatural. And then the voice again. I see you, Eli. I felt physically ill. My chest tightened and my skin went cold. I played it for my mom. She didn't say anything at first. Then she said we should call the landlord. But before we could, things escalated. My parents went out for dinner one night, and I stayed home alone. I was watching a movie in the living room when I heard a loud thud upstairs, then a dragging sound. I muted the TV. Total silence. I crept up the stairs, every step echoing. At the top, the vent in the hallway was open. The cover was bent outward. One of the screws was lying on the floor, and something inside moved. I took a step forward, and then I saw it. A hand, pale, grimy fingers pulling back into the darkness behind the vent. I screamed and ran out the front door barefoot. I didn't stop until I reached the neighbor's house. The police came and searched every inch of the house. They didn't find anyone, but they did find something in the basement. Behind the furnace was a loose panel in the wall. Behind it, a crawl space. Inside were food wrappers, dirty blankets, a small knife, and a notebook. The notebook was filled with drawings of me. Crude sketches of my room, my bed, me sleeping. Notes about what time I woke up, what time I brushed my teeth. One page just said in huge letters, "Soon." We left that night. Never looked back. I don't even know if my parents got our security deposit back. And honestly, I don't care. Story number 2. The apartment across the alley. In 2021, I moved into a small studio apartment in Chicago. It was nothing special. Cracked tile floors, radiator heat, old wiring, but it was cheap and close to my job. My window faced a narrow alleyway, with another apartment building directly across. At night, I could see into a few windows if their lights were on. Most had curtains or blinds, except one, fourth floor, 2 windows to the right. That window was always open, curtain half pulled aside, and nearly every night, a light would turn on just after 11 p.m., and someone would be sitting there, motionless. At first, I thought nothing of it. Probably someone enjoying the night air, right? But as the weeks passed, it became clear something wasn't right. The person never moved, never shifted, never turned their head. They just sat there, facing my direction, every single night. It started bothering me. I closed my blinds, stopped looking. Then one night, I forgot. I was working late, lights off, screen glowing. I looked up. They were standing now, closer to the window, head tilted slightly, not just facing my direction, looking directly at me. I shut the blinds immediately. The next night, the light in their window came on at 10:45, then 10:30, then 10 o'clock. It was like they were adjusting their schedule to mine. I set my phone up to record through a crack in the blinds. That night, at 10:53, the figure stepped up to the window. They were holding something, binoculars. They raised them and stared straight at my apartment. I backed away from the window and sat in the dark. Next morning, I asked my building manager who lived in that unit. He looked confused, said it was vacant, had been for months. I didn't believe him. I called the police. They checked the apartment. It was locked from the inside. When they finally got in, they found it completely empty, except for a single stool, placed right in front of the window, and smudges on the glass. At face level, there were also scratch marks on a wall nearby, long, thin gouges, like fingernails. The officers said it was probably a squatter, but a few nights later, I found something under my door. It was a photo of me sitting at my desk, taken from across the alley. I moved out that weekend, didn't even pack properly, just left. I still don't know who was in that apartment or how long they were watching me, but I do know one thing. They weren't just looking, they were waiting.